everybody, Scott Davenport here with a few pointers about using textures. I recently released a new texture pack, some textures I took in Iberia, so Spain and Portugal. And I got some questions about how best to approach using textures, and I thought, well, I'll show you what I do, and then you can decide if that works for you, if you want to experiment further. So I'm using Perfect Layers, and to get textures into Perfect Layers, you've loaded the texture pack in. Under your extras, you'll find textures, and then any of the texture packs you have loaded in. For me, I have these Iberia textures here. You simply double click on one, and you want to add it as a layer. Now, I've already done that for this image, and so I thought I'd point out a couple of things that I look for when I do the textures. So for this image, I've got plenty of texture in these, these turrets. I wanted to add some other visual interest into the sky and kind of give this more of an older world feel. So I loaded a few textures in and started playing. So let me highlight this one and turn it back on. You can see I'm adding visual interest to the sky. So first couple of things I do is, number one, I'll look at the blending modes and the layer opacity. I usually bring the opacity down to about 50% right away, just so I can see how the texture is going to blend in. And then for blending modes, I will normally look at overlay, soft light, and hard light to start with, but I don't always end up choosing those. There is a level of experimentation needed, depending on the different texture and how you want it to treat your image. And sometimes, the color ones look good, sometimes normal or darken or lighten look good. But I'll tend to start here in the overlay, soft light, hard light area. And for this one, I liked soft light, and I backed it off to about 30 or so percent, as I recall. Now, the other thing you'll notice here is a mask. If I turn on the mask, you can see I have removed some of the texture from these turrets. I already have plenty of texture in these, and that was with the standard masking tools. So I guess the key thing here is you don't have to apply a texture to your entire image. So I use the masking brush with the perfect brush option here, and just paint it all through the areas I didn't want. In this case, it was easier to paint through all of the sky and then invert the mask, because with all the different tones here, the perfect brush takes longer. But however you mask, that's one recommendation. The second one is putting multiple textures on top of each other. So here's another one. I'll turn on this layer. This one happened to be, let's see, texture number 10 in my pack. I ended up choosing hard light, and you can see I have the same type of mask there, although this mask is a little bit lighter. So I'd copied the mask here, pasted it, but I wanted a little more of that yellowish tone to come through on the turrets. So I used the masking brush again and removed some of those masks to make more of that yellowish color shine through. And this last one here, the mask looks a lot more elaborate. And this one's very subtle. I'm using the lighten mode this time. So again, I experimented around and I liked what lighten did. Very low opacity. And this is an intricate mask. If I turn it on, you're going to have a little trouble seeing it, but let me try switching the masking mode to something like grayscale. Actually will work really well. So here's my masking mode. You can see that this mask is elaborate. This is a luminosity mask. Selected the bottom layer, turn off our masking mode here, and did a layer copy luminosity as a mask, and then pasted that mask up on the top here. And again, this was experimentation, just trying to see how things worked out. So let's look at one more example. Now this is effectively the image straight out of the camera. It was a very gray sky, nothing going on at all, and I just treated it in effects to boost up the greens of the tree a little bit, and then played around with a bunch of different textures, trying different looks. You'll see that luminosity mask trick again here, where I've selected this layer, I've done layer, copy, luminosity as mask, and I've pasted that down onto different textures. So let's look at this one here. If I highlight that, here I've got hard light, and I'm getting a really nice yellowish tone here. It almost feels like these trees are now painted onto a wall. And these ones all didn't go together. These two went together. So this was another layering of a second texture. So this one here happened to be texture 9. Using an overlay mode, backing off the opacity really far to just give it some more interest. And then I tried some other different looks. I'll turn these ones off. I'll turn these ones on, just trying different things. So same principles, you know, I'm using soft light on this one. I happen to be using hard light at 100% on this one here, just getting completely different looks, and I didn't want to over texture the trees, so I maintained that mask. One last little tip, I'm going to zoom out here a little bit, Command, minus there, and something else to consider when you're working with textures is the transform tool. You can see that this texture is very, very big compared to the image I have, but you can, grab it, you can resize it to get different texture in there. You can move it around. You can see there's different things showing up. My mask looks funny right now because I'm moving the mask as well. But you can also rotate it. So grabbing here, rotating the mask, or rotating the texture, I should say, doing lots of different things to make the texture look unique for your image. You don't just have to bring it in and leave it in its standard orientation. So there you go, a couple of different tips for using textures. If you're interested in working with textures or you already like doing it, I've got several texture packs on my website. I hope you'll check them out, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much. I'm Scott Davenport.